Good morning, everyone. This is Mike Renick. I am the senior broker and the team lead for Team Renick Real Estate Services. We're also part of the Keller Williams on the Water family. We're proud to be that. I do want to make a little comment up front. After the last video that we did, someone said, Mike, I don't recognize you in a tie. So I have my Keller Williams shirt here. I'm proud of this shirt, and I'll put it back on after the video, but I wanted to look classy today because we have a very special guest, and we're going to talk about a very important topic, and I'll introduce Greg in just a minute. But what we're going to do in this series is we're going to break out and bring to you the entire buyer process and the entire selling process. So each step of the way, I will be inviting experts to come in. We'll be talking about mortgages, insurance, home inspections. The topic today I'll introduce in a second is a very important one because most buyers and sellers in Florida have not heard of that before. So in addition, we're going to launch 3 other updates, and one's going to be called Mike's Market Update, more to follow, but that'll be a weekly update where I pick a city and a community in our area and I talk about what's happening with the statistics. We're also going to, this summer, we're going to launch the Mike Shares Longboat. Again, we came here 8, 9, 10 years ago, not even knowing where Longboat was, and now this is our home and our place of business. And then one last series we're going to launch is Mike's how-to series. We're going to introduce topics like how to effectively launch Alexa for your home, different things like that, and topics that you want to see. So anyway, there we go. That's the series coming forward. Today we have Greg Owens. I'm very, very proud to have Greg with us. Greg is not only the broker and operating partner of Keller Williams on the Water, which of course that's the family Team Renick joined. He is also president of our board of realtors. So having someone of that background and that stature, you kind of understand what he's accomplished so far. And I will say one thing about our topic. He's going to talk about single agency and transaction brokers, and we're going to talk about why that's important to you. So if I hit the right button here, there he is. Good morning, Greg.
Morning, Mike. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Fantastic. Looking forward to this.
This is only our second series, and what folks can't see is I have a lot of buttons in front of me, and if I hit the right button, it goes well. If I hit the wrong button, something can happen, and we'll just recover. But, Greg, what I'd like to do, first of all, again, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. You wear many full-time hats, in addition to being a father and husband and all those kind of things. So I'm very, let's say, very impressed that you can do all those kind of things, and you do them very well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Greg, the topic today is an agent is either a single agent or a transaction broker. And if you would, explain what that means to our visitors.
So in a nutshell, so that we don't get too deep in the weeds, Florida State Law 475 is what regulates realtors in the state of Florida. And there's 2 types of agencies within that, single agency and transaction brokerage. Now, the difference is that if you are not told that the agent is working as a single agent, they are assumed under the law to be a transaction broker. And what I want to do is go through the importance of those differences. I want to tell you right off the bat, the Keller Williams on the Water brokerages, we work as single agents unless we notify people that we are transitioning to transaction broker, which sounds kind of complicated, but it's pretty easy stuff. So here's what is in both of these type of agencies. Dealing honestly and fairly with the clients, accounting for all funds, using skill, care, and diligence in the transaction, presenting all offers and counter offers in a timely manner unless a party has previously directed the licensee otherwise in writing, and disclosing all known facts that materially affect the value of residential property that are not readily observable. That's basically what's going on in both of them. Now, the difference between these two, on a transaction broker, you've got a couple of different things. They are working for the interest of the transaction in a way that they can't give either side of the transaction a leg up, all right? And they have only limited confidentiality, okay? So they can't give information out that would affect either the buyer or the seller. All right, so I just want to make you aware of that. Sometimes people get a little chatty and they shouldn't be, but that's where you are with that. Whereas in single agency is what we use. Here's the difference. In single agency, we have the duty of loyalty confidentiality, not limited confidentiality, but full confidentiality, obedience, and full disclosure of all facts. And the reason that's important to you is I always put it to people this way. When I represent you as a single agent, I cannot say anything to the other party unless you give me permission to do so. And at that time, I'll probably ask you questions like, what would you like me to disclose to the other party, and what would you not want me to disclose to the other party, right, in order for this transaction to go along? And that's always up to you. And I have to be obedient to you. I can only do what's in your best interest at any particular moment, because I'm only representing you as either the seller or the buyer in the transaction. I'm not representing both sides of the transaction or the transaction together. I'm just representing your interests. Now that, of course, is in the confines of our code of ethics and within the law, but I have to be obedient and the confidentiality. Whereas if I'm a transaction broker, which does happen because if we represent the buyer and the seller, we have to become a transaction broker, and we can't give a leg up to either side. We have to do what's best for both parties at that point, all right? But as a transaction broker, I have limited confidentiality because I can't give the information to either side that would give them any advantage within the terms of the transaction. The other thing is you need to know is a lot of people misunderstand that when you work as a single agent, the only people you need to notify is your customers that you're working as a single agent. I've had a lot of, even my realtor brethren who say, well, you didn't disclose that. Well, in fact, the state law says we have to disclose that to our customers and clients, that our fiduciary responsibility is as a single agent, which is the highest fiduciary responsibility of all the agencies. And we have to disclose it to them, not to the other agent. That's where it lies in that. And I've always found that it's much more desirable to be a single agent. I have done transaction brokerage, but that way I'm just devoted to what my clients want in this transaction and what's best for them as our brokerage represents them. So that's it in a nutshell. Someone else also told me once, it's like, as a transaction broker, you have to be neutral like the Swiss, right? Whereas in single agency, there is no neutrality. You're only working for one side of the transaction, and that's the side you represent.
And see, Greg, when Eric and I were looking, and you know, we had an opportunity to go to work with 4 different brokerages last fall, and yours being the one, and actually the one that we merged with. One of the important things, there were many important factors, but the fact that we were going to remain a single agent was near the top of our list. And I'll share from the heart why that was important to us. First of all, we're held to a higher standard, and I like that. Full confidentiality, obedience to the seller, and there's a lot of ways you can define that, or obedience to the buyer or the seller.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that the agents on Team Renick have to be held to a higher standard, and I think that's what buyers and sellers deserve. Now, one of the things that quite candidly is frustrating for me is I have to disclose, and I'm very comfortable with that we disclose we're single agents, but the transaction brokers, which is the overwhelming number of agents or transaction brokers, they don't have to. So when you engage someone, a buyer or seller engages someone, and that agent doesn't have that conversation, then by law, we can understand they're a transaction broker, and they're held to a lesser standard. We were taught in our class, as we got our licenses and stuff, one way to look at it is a transaction broker really works for their broker. What's in the best interest of him or her? Whereas as a single agent, we work for the buyer or the seller, and to me, that's the only way I would have that. Does that make any sense, Greg? Did I summarize that right?
That's an excellent way of putting it. It's your devotion at that point, not devotion, but your responsibility is always at that point is your client or customer. It's not, a lot of agents say, oh, I'm just working for the transaction when they're transaction brokers. That's not necessarily true. They have to work for the best interest of the clients still, right? But you're just limited in what you can do as a transaction broker within the confines of how you're working with your clients. Whereas you're right, with us being single agents, it's all about either our buyer or seller, the person we're working with. It's all about them. Yep.
So the key to me, because the real estate transaction is an important transaction in everyone's life, it's a huge asset that we're talking with. If someone's looking for a doctor or a lawyer or a dentist, we go out and we look for the best of the best. And I think in real estate, unfortunately, we don't publicize the differences of who's what. But in real estate, it should be similar. When you want an agent, one that's dedicated to you. Two, I think you want an agent that's held to the higher standard. And that's what we stood for as independents, and Keller Williams stands for. And we're very happy about that. It made our decision really easy.
Yeah, and a lot of times, I always tell people that this way, because I was a buyer specialist for 3.5 years. And I said, if you went into a courtroom, would you want the attorney for the other side representing you? And always the answer is no. So why would you not want to use a buyer specialist and have a listing agent on the other side? And as single agents, they're representing the interests of their parties within the negotiations, not of both parties. They're representing the interests of the individual parties, which I think is key. If I'm in negotiation, I want the person who's negotiating on my behalf to have my best interests in mind. All right? Even though we want to be amiable and get it together, but during negotiations, it's a negotiation. Inherently, there's a give and take on both sides. And by being single agents, we have that advantage of we're just working for our client in that and their best interest, not the best interest of both sides of the transaction. I know that may sound harsh, but in reality is we're trying to do what we do best for them.
And when we look at that again, so someone might ask us, what's the advantage that we're focused on just our client? Well, every buyer and every seller has different goals, different objectives, different desires they want us to achieve. So let's say a seller puts a property on the market and they say, well, we're not in a hurry. Let's try to get the higher price, even if it takes a few months. And so it's really digging deep and understanding the value there that our seller's asking us to provide, or our buyer, in terms of what kind of property, what kind of pricing. Someone moving down here that's got a short window to find something, we do things differently and so on. So again, when it comes to real estate, one of the things, a real estate agent or a real estate broker is a professional, just like an attorney, just like a doctor, just like a lot of other professions out there. We're licensed, we're educated, we have to do continuing ed. I encourage folks to really understand this topic and choose what's right for you. But I would think you want the one best educated, held to the highest standard, willing to work hard for you. Does that make any sense, Greg?
Yeah, that makes excellent sense. And that's the reason we do it in the brokerages. And it's one of the reasons I'm a big believer in it. It's because it's that higher standard for your clients and for what we do as professionals. And I think we all should be held to the highest standard we can when we're doing business, particularly because we're dealing with people, basically probably one of the biggest assets in their life.
Let me ask this. All right, so you're the broker operating partner of Keller Williams on the water. Could I make the assumption that when the top broker decides they're transaction brokers, it's easier on them to be transaction brokers? Would that be a fair assessment?
That probably would be a fair assessment. It's easier for them because then the relationship, it's much easier for the agent and for the broker to work on a transactional basis as opposed to a single agency basis, because of what I was describing before. You only have limited confidentiality. You're looking for the best interest of the transaction, and whereas, so it makes it a little less. It's a little less contentious, or it could be, I guess, but it's more or less you're working it out so you get the transaction closed, not necessarily what's going to be best in your client's interest. So in that sense, it's easier for them to do it that way, whereas we're looking out for the best interests of our clients, not necessarily just getting the transaction closed.
So is there another way to say that? Maybe Keller Williams and Team Renick, then we're not interested in what's easier, we're interested in what's the best for our client.
Exactly. You're not interested in pushing the easy button. You're interested in what's going to be the best result possible for the customers we work with. There is no easy button, and we don't want an easy button. We want a button that makes our clients proud to be in business with us.
And one of the things, I'm looking around my desk here, I have no easy button here. So it's all about wanting to do the right job. I mean, anyone can take an easy way out of something, but it's about working hard for the buyer or working hard for the seller. It's about doing the homework. It's knowing the market. That's why we're going to launch the market update series shortly. I don't know how many agents take the time to go into a market, and we actually deep dive right into the subdivision or the condo association, because that's information you need to have to be a successful agent or broker, in my mind. Because if I'm working for somebody, I've got to bring the best game forward every single day. I'm going to go back to something you mentioned about if you go into court, do you want the other attorney representing you? I do a little bit different take on that, and I asked someone, if you go into court as a defendant, would you like the prosecuting attorney to represent you? And of course, so, Greg, anything else you'd like to add? This is a fantastic conversation, but anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, it's just a little off topic of what we were talking about. You're talking about market knowledge. And my belief, too, is for the agents that are out there is to be students of the market constantly gaining knowledge. We go through the market statistics every month for our counties and our areas. What are the breakdown, days on market, median prices? Are we going up? Are we going down? What's happening with inventory? What's the 5-year trend? I'll do a 5-year trend or more. And the reason we do that, and I know you do it too, is because with that knowledge, that in-depth knowledge that we provide them exceptional service based on our knowledge. We're not just guessing at things. We have actual facts and numbers to present them to show them what's going on in the marketplace. So we're taking the emotion out of it, bringing it down to the numbers so that they know exactly what's going to happen with the asset they're going to purchase.
And see, what I like, because of what you provide the tools for the agents, you know, I live in Longboat Key. My office is here. We work everywhere, but Longboat Key is one of the few cities I've ever seen that sits in 2 counties. So if I would just look at Sarasota County statistics, I'm not doing my job. If I look at just Manatee County, I need to look at Longboat Key, both ends of the islands, the county they're in, and actually drill down to a condo association or a neighborhood subdivision, so that if we're representing a seller and it's a buyer's market, we behave one way. If it's a seller's market, we behave a different. Just the opposite is true when we're representing a buyer. We have to behave depending on the market. And here's the key thing. The fact that at Keller Williams, we can represent either and we have experience with either, I believe gives us a leg up, because we understand the psychology of both. And that's all part of when we get into the negotiations, coming away with a win-win. Does that make any sense?
Exactly. Yep, you're correct. It's always about the win-win. Yep.
And where did I get the win-win scenario? Where did I see that recently?
Win-win or no deal.
Absolutely. And that
thing, it's part of the Y4C2Cs is what we live with in Keller Williams.
That's our foundation. Yep, and I'm very proud of that. So,
company.
Anything else to add, Greg?
No, nothing at all. And I just want to thank you very much for inviting me on the program. And anytime you want me to be there, I'll be there for you.
I'm going to take you up on that. You have a lot of value to add. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and the value you added today. Thanks, Greg.
Take care.
All right,
Bye-bye.
You too. Okay, everyone, I hope you found some value with that. We'll be back again tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and we'll talk about the art of negotiations. If you have any questions, reach out on my personal cell. That number is 941-400-8735, or reach me at mike@teamrenick.com. Our website is michaelrenick.com. We're here to help. We take calls from early in the morning until late at night. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Have a great Wednesday.